All right. I want to talk through 3 things you can start doing to move towards asynchronous work. So, like I've talked about before, asynchronous work is the future of work. This whole idea of hybrid work is fine for a momentary conversation, but where we're going to be talking about in the future is asynchronous work. So, I think it's important that we start to talk about that. And what I mean by asynchronous work is work that's kind of done very separately on people's individual timetables with communication that is not instant, which sounds kind of terrifying to some people, but that's okay because it can be more productive and honestly more effective and can produce just better lifestyles for everyone involved. So let me just walk you through a few tips to get started with asynchronous work. The first is set communications expectations. So there's always this idea that people are going to get back to you instantly, that people are just glued to their email and they're going to respond instantaneously to anything. And so a lot of times what we end up doing is we send an email and then we get impatient, and then we send a Slack message and then we get impatient, and then we text and call, and it's just kind of unnecessary if you think about it. And so it's better to just set the communication response expectations up front. So how soon should your team respond to an email? How soon should they be expected to respond to a Slack message or a Teams message? How quickly should they respond to a text message? And is it ever okay for text messages to come after 5 o'clock, or say after 8 p.m. or maybe even after 11 p.m.? Is that okay on your team? So I think it's important to write these things down and create communications expectations so that everybody on the team knows what to expect and how to respond. Next, create schedule freedom. The whole point of asynchronous work is that people can work when they need to work, because a single person living in a downtown area is going to want to work at different times than a married person living in a suburban area. And they're going to want to work at different times than a married person or a single person that has kids and is dealing with school buses and pickups and daycares and everything else. And so allow people to create the schedule that works for them so that work can integrate more into their lives rather than their lives having to be built around work. That's kind of where everything is going, because not everybody fits the 9-to-5 mold, and that's okay. We can get better teams with amazing people if we're willing to look and think outside of that box. And last, set times for synchronous work, because I recognize that being in the same space, either virtually or in person, is so important. And so set times for those collaborations, set times for those serendipitous meetings and conversations, set times to do that planning. And maybe for your work, it's to say, okay, we're going to always be on Zoom on Wednesdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., collaboratively working during that time period. That's fine. Make that work for you. Or maybe you're going to set ad hoc meetings instead, and you're going to work through those slowly and figure out what works for you. But ultimately, you don't have to always be in the same place in order to work collaboratively. You can work asynchronously, and then you can also come together to work synchronously when the moment is needed. So with that said, thanks for joining me. I'm going to continue to talk more about asynchronous work. It's so important, and it's where the industry is headed. It's where thought leadership, it's where thought workers are headed. So if you want to join me on that journey, make sure to go to my website, adamjwalker.com, and sign up for my newsletter. Also, please go to my YouTube page and subscribe. Thanks for joining.